So, welcome to Car Con Carne. I'm James Van Osdell, and this is episode number 729. And after almost 9 years into this podcast, you can count on one hand the amount of shows I've done solo. Now, the main reason's obvious. This is an interview-based show, which is mostly done in my car, not really a solo thing. And honestly, when I used to do talk radio, I did it on WGN for a couple years, fill in overnights. I used to hate monologuing, the idea of just talking to myself, not really to myself, but at the universe. It just never felt comfortable. It was always hard to do without another warm body or second voice to turn to. Now, I've long since gotten over that. That was, doesn't feel like it, but it was a long time ago. I'm fine going solo, but the podcast doesn't really require that I do it. That said, it's Monday, May 2nd. I had a last-minute cancellation for tonight. This was supposed to be an in-person show at a Logan Square restaurant. It was just me and the restaurateur, but the restaurateur bailed at a point where it was just too late to backfill the guests or even scrounge for a plan B. So here I am. This is one of those weeks, a rare week where I'd only planned for one episode, especially since the pandemic started. I'd been pretty packed with recordings over the past 2.5 years, 2+ years, not 2.5. I've been pretty busy, usually 2 shows a week, sometimes 3 shows a week or more. So not doing a show this week didn't really feel like an option. So here I am. And besides, I wanted to check in. This is, a chance for us to connect. I used to do this a lot more during the pandemic when I was doing this from home when we were all stuck at home. So I want to check in with you. After all, it's the start of Mental Health Awareness Month. Everyone's dealing with their own shit. We're all getting better at keeping it close to the vest as we're all back out in the universe, back out in the world. So are you good? I'm serious. If you're not, I hope we're at least connected here on social media so we can share snarky comments on the same dumb posts on social media. As for what's going on with me, I hear you asking. Well, maybe you're not asking me. Let me tell you. I wanted to go to this thing called Podcast Movement. It is an annual, actually, I think it's twice annual now, podcast conference. And the most recent one was in Los Angeles in March. And I started looking into the cost of going to this podcast conference. Los Angeles is not cheap. Getting to and from is not cheap by air. And then I looked into the hoteling or the lodging situation. To stay at the hotel affiliated with the Podcast Movement conference, it was $200 a night. Now, that doesn't include all the fees and taxes that go along with a hotel room. So that was expensive. Then I considered ground transport to and from the airport. Then I considered meals and all the other incidentals that go along with travel. And if I was frugal about it, I figured for a 4-night visit and a stay at Podcast Movement, it would set me back somewhere between $2,500 and $4,000. Don't know about you. I don't have that to just lay out for a week of podcast discussion. And then as I did more research into Podcast Movement, I realized it wasn't the thing for me. Paris Hilton DJ'd one of the after parties. Will Ferrell was one of the keynote speakers. I started to think this isn't really a podcast conference for most of the world. This is for established people. This is for people who have expense cards, expense accounts, money to burn that way. And that got me thinking that nothing like that, or nothing podcast education community centric, existed in Chicago. So I posted something about this around the same time I was thinking about the Podcast Movement. I wanted to create something for podcasters, an educational day, a day of forums, of community, of education. And it's coming. It's happening May 21st. This is if you are a podcaster, if you're interested in podcasting, if you're ready to launch something, we have a day for you. It'll be held at 2112. It is Chicago Podcast Day from 10 o'clock in the morning, 10:30 in the morning, till 5 o'clock in the evening. Nonstop panels and presentations and information about podcasting, meant to appeal to people who just want to dip their toe in, or people who are already there and could use some ideas and some thoughts and some inspiration. 2112 4245 Knox. I love the facility. It is an entertainment industry business incubator, and they do incredible work. They have incredible people working out of there. And the panels I've been working on, I really think cover the breadth of what people have asked me about. People who are interested in podcasting have talked to me about, asked for counsel on. So, Podcasting 101, the basics. What do you need to know about podcasting? I could think of no better person than my friend Jaime Black to lead that panel, or not even a panel. It's a discussion presentation. He's going to kind of set the tone for the day. Podcasting 101. We're going to cover creating a branded podcast for small businesses, people who are looking for brand extensions in the form of audio for their business. I've got a cool panel going for that. We're going to cover DIY marketing with a really special speaker who knows what they're talking about. Podcast law. I get this question a lot. You see it a lot on the World Wide Web. People assuming they can use clips of music in a podcast. Well, no, I heard you can use 10 seconds as long as you don't go over. There's so many bad pieces of information floating out there. So many just patently wrong bits of information. I've recruited an entertainment attorney to cover things like copyright law and fair use, things that podcasters need to and frankly don't know. I think that's going to be super informative. Also, you know my background, long history in Chicago media. I think it's interesting. Podcasting, really from the jump, has been the domain of amateurs. Amateurs have found a way to be really successful in this audio medium, and it's the professional broadcasters who've been left in the dust by their own design in many respects. But I think there's a lot that today's podcasters, that people who aspire to podcast, can learn from traditional media. So I have a panel called What Can Digital Audio Learn from Traditional Media? A great panel lined up for that. Also for the starter, for the first-time podcaster, or for the very amateur podcaster, what kind of gear do you need? Like the basics. What is appropriate to start things up? Should you use a USB microphone? Should you use an audio interface like I am? Well, we'll cover all that in one of the panels. Also, social media. How should you best use social media? Everything from using Twitch and TikTok to paid ads on Facebook and Google ads. A comprehensive panel on how to use social media for podcasting. The biggest question I think everyone interested in podcasting asks, how the hell do I make money off this? How on earth do you monetize it? You see so many people start podcasts and just stop once they realize, holy shit, it's a lot of work. I don't have a lot of audience and I'm not making a lot of money. We're going to talk to a couple people in this panel who are successful in monetizing their shows. And I think there will be a lot to learn from that. Finally, audio editing. For people who've never done audio type content before, it can seem kind of daunting. It's for people who've been in radio forever, not a big deal. But if you're new to it, there are lots of tips, tricks, and things you might benefit from learning. I have a pro coming in the building to cover some tips and tricks to kind of speed up the audio editing process and demystify a lot of what's involved. That's all happening in the course of one day, 10:30 until 5 o'clock. It is going to be intensive. And I think it's going to be super helpful. And not most importantly, but importantly, it's a way to develop a sense of community around Chicago podcasting, which I don't think exists at this point. Chicago Podcast Day, when I'm done doing this live, I'll pop the ticket link in the comments. But I'm really excited about this. If you know someone who's interested in podcasting, someone who is a podcaster, this is for them. Again, it's at 2112 on May 21st. Fantastic date. We're doing that 4245 knocks at 2112. Chicago Podcast Day. I'm really excited about it. This has consumed a great deal of my free time for the past couple weeks. What else is going on with me? Record collecting is a sickness. It threatens to overtake my existence. I got this. I was really excited to find this. This, Record Store Day this year, this seemed to be the holy grail, the one everyone wanted, the Ramones box set of all their 80s stuff. I didn't go on Record Store Day to a record store. I hate waiting in line. It doesn't matter what it's for. It's not for me. But I went to a record store, Bucket of Blood, and they had this on the shelf or on the table as of last Thursday, like days after Record Store Day. I think it was their last copy. I hadn't intended on spending $150 that day at Bucket of Blood, but here we are, no regrets. And I mentioned this on social media. I think in my head I had it that the Ramones 80s stuff wasn't very good. There's a lot of good stuff in here. There's some less good stuff in here, but Brain Drain especially, I really enjoyed re-listening to that one. So, yeah, it's a sickness. And when I listen to music at home when I'm working, I tend to listen to a lot of soundtracks and scores. They're really good to have on in the background, especially stuff that doesn't have lyrics, so I don't get distracted. I like the sonics of soundtrack music. I'm currently waiting on a bunch. I've pre-ordered a bunch of stuff. Terrifier 2, can't wait for that one from Paul Wiley. The Fog, repress, gotta love John Carpenter. Also waiting on The Bride of Frankenstein on vinyl. That one excites me. I don't think that's ever been available on vinyl. That's pretty cool. As for the podcast, I'm always working on guests. I'm always working on restaurant destinations to go to. Always looking for advice or tips or thoughts. If you know of someone who'd make a cool guest, or if you know of a restaurant that wants to do something like this, jump in the car and talk about their food, I'm 100% receptive to those suggestions. As for sponsorships, podcasts don't just print money. It is a hustle to get sponsors involved with a podcast. I do have a verbal commitment for a sponsor that should start, I think, within the next couple of weeks, which is super exciting. I'm flattered that anyone would ever want to be involved with this. It's a real honor to be able to partner with a business. So that's coming soon. Also, I've been involved with the Double Door podcast. Double Door. Now, we remember Double Door, a staple in the Chicago music scene since the 90s, a really important part of the Chicago music scene, a transformative location for Wicker Park. I think Double Door was really instrumental in changing Wicker Park into what it became. Double Door obviously went out of business. They were forced out of their Wicker Park location. They are in the process of rebuilding, remodeling, revamping a gorgeous old Chicago building at Wilson and Broadway. They're going to reopen this fall. It is Double Door. It's going to be a fantastic room for live music. As this construction, as this work is being done to get Double Door V2 off the ground, I've been producing their podcast. It's a bi-weekly podcast hosted by the co-owners of Double Door, Sean Mulroney and Pete Bruce. And it's fun. If you're interested in business, the business of running an entertainment venue, if you're interested in Chicago history, if you're interested in just live music, it's a cool podcast for you to check out, especially because this is one of those rare opportunities to track the progress of something like this from the beginning. And every week you get some more nuggets about what's involved, whether it's licensing, getting financing, dealing with neighbor issues. They were broken into a couple weeks ago. It's all part of the podcast that's available on doubledoor.com and, of course, any podcast platform. One question I get asked a lot, a general question is, what do you think about radio? What's going on with radio these days? And I've been officially out of radio for about 9 months now, by choice. And truthfully, the farther away I get, the less I care. I wish my friends and colleagues in radio good luck. May the odds be ever in your favor. Good luck. And finally, let's talk about music. I'm not going to Lollapalooza. If you are, may the odds be ever in your favor. Lots of cool smaller festivals coming up. The T1 Fest happening at Reggie's, Pravda Fest happening at Sketchbook. Great time to see independent music. It's all coming to a head, it feels like, over the next couple of weeks, and just so much going on. So as I'm getting back out into the universe, I hope to see you all at some shows, at all of the shows, in fact. One other thing I should mention, television-wise, right before I started recording tonight, I'm trying to wrap up Ozark. I kind of lost interest about a season ago, but now I'm committed and I'm going to finish Ozark. I had almost fully lost interest, but right before I started recording tonight, I got past the episode from season 4, this part 2 of season 4, that featured a Todd Rundgren song, I Saw the Light. That was pretty memorable. That's one that'll stay with me. So I'm back in through the end. That one kind of hooked me. Another show I wanted to like, Moon Knight, I tried. I gave it a couple episodes. Can't do it. I just can't. I know people who like it. Daryl. It's just not for me. Anyway, I'm solo tonight because I got blown off. I appreciate you indulging me as I did this monologuing sort of thing. Thank you for supporting Car Con Carne. Thank you for watching if you're watching on Facebook or YouTube. Thank you for listening. And I do have a lot of cool stuff, cool guests coming up and planned. And like I said, I'm always open to feedback for cool guests and things to do. So thank you. I appreciate you. And I'm going to figure out how to stop doing this. And hope you have a good night.